Thank you for joining me here tonight.
Beers with Thomas.
Ice cold beers with Thomas.
Yeah.
to go with some burning takes with Thomas tonight. You're joining me tonight. I gave you a variety of topics that we could talk about. You decided to select the topic where we kind of talk about this Flames rebuild, the timeline of it. Now, I feel like we often talk a lot about like the players and how we're going to get those players and stuff like the who and the how. But tonight you kind of want to talk about the when, because I did some research on this. And I thought it might be interesting to talk about. But when I floated that out there to you, what kind of intrigued you about the idea of talking about how long is this all going to take?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It's just like what's in store for Flames fans. What kind of how long is it going to take? What kind of trades are we going to see? Like, what mistakes can the Flames avoid? And yeah, that's the most interesting thing, I think.
Yeah,
just knowing like what they should actually do.
So when I sat down to do this research, I looked at the Flames. I was going to compare the Flames and Ottawa because I kind of been through this with Ottawa. It's like kind of like my boyhood team, the team out east that I cheer for. Don't follow them as closely as I'd like to, but they still do hold a special place in my heart. And they went through the process that a lot of Flames media maintain is impossible for a small market Canadian team to go through, and that's be bad and suck for a little bit for the long-term gain of it. And so because they're another Canadian team, because they're another small market Canadian team, and they just went through this and it looks like they've come out the other side, I thought it'd be good to like look at what they did and how long it took them and see if that could create a similar timeline or a possible timeline for the Flames. But then as I sat down to do the research, I kind of kept like poking and prodding away. And I kind of realized that pretty much all of the Canadian teams since the lockout have done a full-on rebuild, except for the Flames kind of did one too. It just didn't show it. Yeah, they rushed it. But all of the Canadian teams since the lockout have done a rebuild, except for Winnipeg. But the reason Winnipeg didn't is because when they got here to Atlanta, they smashed that draft and have been probably one of the best, most well-run organizations in the NHL. Haven't got a cup, but still a very well-run organization that probably hasn't had to. But every other Canadian team, either by choice or was forced into this, and so that gave me the opportunity to look at 5 franchises that are all have similar issues as the Flames, as in they are in Canada, and what they did and how they got through it. And I thought we could talk about that here today. And so I was just explaining this to you, but I'll just explain it again for the people watching and listening, is I kind of started to realize that there was some trends, and in each of the rebuilds, there was, I would say, four rough stages that each of those teams had to go through. Because each of them took multiple years. It's not, I would argue it's pretty much impossible for any team to just snap their fingers and go from bad to cup contender overnight. And so those 4 stages that I define were the it's over stage, the tear down stage, the building up to the vibe stage, and then the vibing stage. And the way I defined all those 4, so when you look at the it's over stage, that's the moment that you realize that this team is not it anymore and a rebuild is necessary, to the point in time where they actually make their first transaction that signifies that they are rebuilding. And then the teardown stage, it picks up right where the it's over stage left off. And that's from the first major transaction that's made to the last major transaction that's made to trade out a veteran for future pieces to facilitate the rebuild. And then it's building up to the vibe stage is from the moment of the last transaction to the moment that a fan base gets to start having fun again in the year that they will inevitably make it to the playoffs again. Because I should probably mute this, and then the vibing stage is basically the season in which the season in which that team inevitably clinches a playoff spot, and once they clinch the playoff spot, the rebuild's over.
Right.
So I went through that for. I noticed that of all the rebuilds, you could kind of break them up into those different time frames. They all took a different amount of time for each team, but you could do that for every single one. And I think it's a great topic to talk about today because the Flames, I think, are still only, even though I think this process started in the 23-24 season, so 2 years ago now, the Flames are still only in the second stage of that phase because the it's over phase was the horrific start to that season when they started awfully, got embarrassed in the outdoor game. We're having a start kind of similar to this season where they were absolutely awful, and it was beyond clear to everybody that this team was not going to make the playoffs, and they would have to trade all the pending UFAs that they had that year because they had such a collection of them.
You could even argue it was before when like Johnny and Chuck left.
I think with hindsight, that's when it began.
Yeah.
But it didn't become obvious to everybody involved until that moment.
Yeah.
I look at the Tkachuk trade as, again, with hindsight, because we were all acting emotionally. We had just lost. We just had an over 100-point season and just won a playoff round and lost to our biggest rival. Everybody was acting emotionally and not logically. Mm-hmm. But with the benefit of hindsight, I would make the argument that the Tkachuk trade was one of, if not the biggest mistake this franchise has ever made. Not for they were forced to trade him, but for the path that they chose to go down. In that they
not for futures, but
for retirement guys,
yeah.
Like guys you immediately had to sign to retirement contracts. They took a 25-year-old and turned him into like a 28-year-olds. So, but you're right. Yes, that was when it should have been over. When it was actually declared over was that 23-24 season. That's an astute. That's a good point. Yeah. And then the what's it called? The teardown phase started when Elias Lindholm was traded. That was the first big fish. That was the first big piece to fall. It was the Flames. It was the team's number one center. They got a huge return for him, a return that involves two of the top three prospects in the organization right now. It signified, we're like this season is done. Like we're trading all these UFAs. We're not making the playoffs. Like all of our other UFAs teams come calling because we are selling. And that's what the Flames did. They didn't lose a single guy for nothing that year. You can squabble over how well they did in those trades, but they did start and tore down a significant part of the team. The issue is so when I looked at all the other teams, their teardown phase took 1 year max. We were just kind of going through it. Like when the Canucks decided, well, maybe we're forced into rebuilding, they traded Kessler and Bieksa over the course of 1 year. And that completed their teardown. The Senators traded Carlson and Stone, and that was from like September to the trade deadline that year, less than a year. The Habs were kind of put in an unfortunate situation because their two best players from their cup run team never played again because they were hurt, Weber and Price. So they didn't have a whole lot to tear down. But the beginning of that teardown was marked with the Toffoli trade to Calgary. And then about a year later, it was either that offseason or the following offseason, they traded Alexander Romanov for a first-round pick, which I was, even looking back on hindsight, I was like, oh my God, it's no wonder that team is so, like, they just got first-round picks given to them by other teams. Like
Monahan, too, they got a first-round pick to take on a second-line center. And then they traded him for another first-round pick.
It was it like looking back at the transactions Montreal made, it's no surprise where they're at right now. It's truly impressive and I'm super envious of what they did.
And that's got to be the fastest rebuild of any of the other teams.
I would say Toronto's was the fastest.
Toronto's, okay.
Well,
That was less of a rebuild and more of just a
start to finish,
tank or
it was start to finish. Montreal was probably the fastest. You were initially right there. One of Toronto's phases, I think it was the building up to the Vibes stage, was incredibly short because their teardown was when they traded Kessel in the summer and then Phaneuf, I think, during the next season. I might be slightly off on this, but anyways, it was about a year for all the other teams. The issue with the Flames is they were an incredibly old team when they had to start the teardown. They had all the pending UFAs that year, so that was Lindholm, Tanev, Hanifin. But in addition to that, they had Kadri, Weegar, Huberdeau, Rasmus, Coleman. Like, it was, I cannot emphasize how old, like, not every team is that old. They were especially old when they had to tear it down. They had so much to tear down, and they tore so much of it down that year, but there's still pieces left to tear down because they're still here today. And the reason I think I'm frustrated is this teardown is taking years. Like, whereas other teams took like a year max or months to do it, the Flames have to be forced into everything that they do. And this stage of the rebuild is just taking so long, and it's just going to delay the inevitable pain. Because to me, this teardown phase will not be done until, I'd say, Anderson and Kadri are gone. You could make the argument on Coleman if you want to. I'd hear that, but that's how old this team was. There was a lot of pieces to tear down, and they're just taking so long to do it because last year they took a year off. They were like that kid who goes to university, does 1 year, doesn't like it, and just takes a year off to vibe because, oh, that was hard. I didn't like doing that anymore. But last year, when they didn't have the guts to do what was right and didn't want to upset a locker room that accomplished fucking nothing, I'll have to do something about that. They accomplished absolutely nothing. It just delayed and made the teardown take longer, and it's going to make this whole rebuild take longer. I talked for a really long time there. What do you want? What do you have to say?
Just continuing on from that, I think, the plan might be to trade those guys this year, and hopefully it is. I really hope so. But they still need to play those guys and get them points, get them make sure they have value by the time the trade deadline comes and the market's there. So I'm still hopeful that they do. And they can't draft any more players until next summer anyways. So they didn't add anyone at the free agency, and they didn't add anyone last trade deadline. So that is a good sign at least. They haven't fumbled too far, I guess.
They haven't reversed course.
Yeah.
They've just, instead of going on the course, they've just stood still, it feels like. So at least there's that. And to be honest, like, we're recording this on November 6th. 5th?
Yeah, 6th.
No, we're recording this on November 6th. I think the trade deadline is exactly 4 months from today. I think it's March 6th. So they still have 4 months to make these trades. We're recording this the day of a bombshell reporting by TSN's Darren Dreger, in which he said the Flames have no interest in trading Nazem Kadri right now, or I think at all. They have no interest in trading Nazem Kadri at all. If that is true, I think we're unbelievably cooked, and I don't know if we have hope as a franchise. That could be a whole other show.
He didn't say the Flames. He said
Murray Edwards.
So that gives me a little bit of hope. And Murray Edwards might probably not being smart about it, trying to get his value up. Make sure
it all could be some 5D chess bargaining thing.
It could be, yeah.
Which is why, I'm not saying there's no hope yet, because there is still 4 months. That is just one guy's report, and there's still 4 months to trade him. It could be it could just be a bargaining thing. Like, there's a lot of what ifs and what we don't know. What we can say for fact is that the Flames have 4 months to the trade deadline, and we really won't have the answer on if they decide to trade Nazem Kadri until after the trade deadline or he's traded. So there is still lots of time for this trade to happen. I guess what I'm just saying is like, even if I'm expecting it to happen at the trade deadline. If you ask me what I think is going to happen with Kadri, I would say he's traded sometime in February or March. And if I think that happens, that will kind of signify the end of him and Anderson being traded will be the end of the teardown that started when Elias Lindholm was traded.
Correct. Yeah.
And that will have taken two years, but it took every other Canadian team 1 year max, maybe 15 months. That's kind of like, as I did this research, that was the thing that immediately jumped out to me about the Flames, because we can't really talk about the other stages because they're not in them yet.
Right.
But as far as like what this process and what the Flames are going through, like no other team took this long to tear everything down, and it's just delaying things, in my opinion.
Most likely, yeah. The one thing though too is, they did get quite good draft capital. Like, it seems like they made some good picks. The prospects have like had a kind of slow start to the year in a lot of cases, but they need to wait a few years for these guys anyway. Like, a lot of them are not ready. The one that's frustrating to see, like Gridden and Parekh not being in the lineup consistently though, but they're still really young. They haven't been ruined yet. Yeah, so it's frustrating right now in the early stages of the season because we haven't been able to see a lot of them. But that doesn't mean that the rebuild is like they aren't getting better when they're playing right now.
It doesn't mean they're never coming.
Yeah.
It just, I think if Anderson and Kadri had already been traded, like, does that not open up the exact two spots to maybe see Gridden and Parekh in the lineup right now?
And that's just it. Like, that's what needs to happen for them to get in the lineup. But there's also, like, the market probably isn't as good as it will be in a few months. For
sure. For sure. I guess my frustration is, like, this wasn't done over the offseason. It wasn't done last year. And, whether it should have been done last year is a whole other topic.
I think for Anderson, 100% should have been last year.
Yeah.
Or at least in the offseason.
Yeah. But that's not what happened, and that's the reality we're faced with. And like those two prospects specifically, Gridden and Parekh, but Craig and the scouting department, we believe, has done a good job the last two drafts drafting players. So it's not like once we trade these veterans, it's the trading of the veterans, the excitement is twofold. One, the return you could get for them, but then immediately there's going to be young prospects that you're excited about stepping in and playing at the NHL level right away. So, and not having it not done yet is just delaying things, but nothing, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it. I feel like I've made this abundantly clear that this is just taking the Flames deciding to draw this out is kind of just making it a longer process for the Flames. So that's really all we can say about the Flames timeline, because they, like I said, they're only in what I would say stage 2 of this process. Do you want to talk about some other teams?
Let's go.
Yeah. Is there a certain stage or team that you're most curious about?
I definitely think Ottawa and Montreal. Montreal, just because their team is so good now. Like, they got so many young good players. They added like Dobson, who's got a couple seasons under his belt. Like, he's like I don't know. When I look at the Flames and the moves they made, like, he's like their Dougie Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
They have so many other pieces already. So yeah,
Montreal. So
excited.
Yeah, what you mentioned it earlier, and I think Montreal was the fastest team to do it because it was over for them in that 21-22 season because they made the Cup final in 2021, in the bubble year.
Or was that even 2020? I thought that was.
No, it was the Canadian bubble year. They made the final.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and then the very next year, the Habs got off to a brutal start, and it was abundantly clear to everybody that Like they were an old team that made that cup final. It's abundantly clear to everybody we need to get younger. They actually already had some pretty young pieces. They had Caulfield and Suzuki already, which helps things. Is like the Habs didn't start from absolutely nothing, and that's a big factor in why they've been so successful. Is like they at least had something to start with when they got things started. And like I said earlier, their teardown phase really began with when they traded Tyler Toffoli to the Calgary Flames.
After was that from 2021?
It was during the season that it was over. So it was over, and then months later they decided to tear it down. Similar to the Flames. Like I will say, like the it's over phase for the Flames was pretty comparable to all the other teams.
Yeah.
So that the Habs traded Toffoli, and then I can't remember if it was that off season or the next off season. So it was either a couple of months or about 15 months. They traded Alexander Romanov to the Islanders for a first-round pick. Like I said, I still can't really believe how they pulled that off. And it's going to bother me now because I think they got a pretty decent player with that pick too, but it's escaping me at the moment. And so the Habs already had some stuff already had some pieces, but before they even realized it was over, which helps, they had some young pieces already. They tore things down relatively quickly, and then 2022 they drafted Slafkovsky. I think that was Slafkovsky, and then 23 was, I believe, Reinbecker in the first, and then 24 was Demidov.
Yeah. It's so good now.
Yeah, exactly. And to help all of that too, they got Hudson in the second round in one of those years. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember which year. I think it was it might have been 2022 as well. And so they got the first for Romanov. They got the first from the Flames for taking on Monahan, and then the first for trading away Monahan. So if you're wondering how Montreal is able to do this so fast, I would say kind of came down to three things. Like they already had pieces in place. They had pieces in place before they even got started. They made a lot of really good trades, and they've drafted really well. And then it all also kind of crescendoed at the perfect time because, the years they were tearing it down and kind of building up to things was like 21-22, 22-23, and then 23-24. So that was about a couple of years of building up to the vibes. And then last year was when they went back to the playoffs,
right.
And they basically had all of their young players getting better at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like very methodically planned out where everything's kind of happening. Everything is building up to the same moment in time.
Right. And that's a benefit of having like 7 first-round picks over 3 years.
Yeah. Why don't I?
And they didn't even get anything for Weber or for Rice.
No, they didn't. Yeah.
They just went off into the sunset.
Yeah. Yeah. They didn't have huge pieces to tear down. They did this without like having massive pieces to tear down.
Yeah. It's unbelievable, actually.
Yeah. Let's see. Montreal Canadiens.
It's magic.
History. It's Montreal Magic, man. And they're also just really well run. So let's look at their draft history.
They hit with all their draft picks.
22. So in 22, they got Slafkovsky 1 overall, and that was the year they also got Hudson in the second, at the end of the second even to boot. And then they had another first that year from, I don't know. I don't remember what their second first is. Philip Messar. I don't know who that is. Then 23, they got David Reinbacker, who kind of like is just like he's almost looking like a complimentary piece for them, 5 overall. And then 2024 was when they got like Demidov, who might be their most important. Him or Hudson probably is going to be like their most important player going forward. And then of course last year they were able to take their own pick and the pick we gave them to go get Noah Dobson, a player we also traded away a first for.
Did they? Yeah, that's true. Did we trade, or did they trade 2 firsts for Dobson?
They traded their own and the Flames
Oh, wow.
because they had back-to-back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Montreal is probably like the model for a Canadian team on how to like quickly rebuild. Like I think there are very few organizations that would trade futures with the Canadians at this moment in time.
Yeah, it's already like too late for us to be as good at that.
I think so. Because again, we've taken something to tear it down.
We're already in year 4 of this thing.
Yeah, basically, like between when they made the Cup final and when they made the playoffs again was 4 seasons. We're about to miss the playoffs for the 4th season in a row.
Wow. Oh, they won 2 games in a row. We can start playing the parade.
Why don't we converse that with the team that took the longest?
Okay.
That would be our friends up north,
Yeah.
the Edmonton Oilers. I think so. Edmonton, don't worry, I will make a lot of fun on them shortly. They initially kind of got a bit of a raw deal with Pronger. So their last Cup team was that 06. The last before the whole rebuild, the 10-year rebuild, they had to tear down the 06 Cup run team.
They went from the Cup to no playoffs next year, right?
I believe so. Yeah. And a big reason why for that was I think they were basically forced to trade Pronger. Or did he leave in free agent? I can't even
He
remember.
was a free agent.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember off. So I just remember there was kind of it was, forgive me, it was almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But there was kind of a raw deal where he either demanded to be traded or he was a free agent. It was one of those two. So that is like their biggest piece that they could not get anything for. And the result of that was like they really had nobody to trade away to like bookend the start and the end of this teardown. They did have Ryan Smith, and I did define that as like the beginning of their teardown. But then if you look for like years of transactions, the Oilers didn't trade a single player for a first round pick. Like there was no, after that Ryan Smith, there was no big trade that they could make to net them another first round pick until they traded Dustin Penner, who they acquired the offseason after trading Ryan Smith. So their teardown was like 6 years, or it was like 4 years or something like that, because they traded Ryan Smith and then that offseason acquired Dustin Penner, I believe it was an RFA, and then they weren't awful. They middled, missing the playoffs, but not bottoming out for about 4 years, I think if my math's on that, because I think Hall was 2010. And so their teardown was bookended by them trading away a player that they acquired during the teardown.
That's so bizarre.
And that was, I kind of forgot that they middled for so long. Because when you think of the Oilers, you think of them being last and failing with like
until 2010.
2010.
Taylor Hall.
Yeah, but there was actually like 3 years there where they were just middling.
Yeah,
and that's what concerns me about the Flames. Like, are we just in the beginning of that middling period before it gets so bad that even a first overall pick can't like materially affect things? Now, the thing Calgary has going their way is they have players to trade away to net them extra assets, and it appears
drafted a bunch.
They've been drafting well, and the Oilers did not draft super well. Between like before Hall and after their Cup run, they drafted pretty poorly actually.
And they just didn't keep picks, as you said.
Yeah,
which is very bizarre when you are a team that's in the Cup final.
Yeah,
and then straight out of the playoffs the next year, you lost your best player in free
reasons.
For reasons, yeah. And then you don't have anyone else who can really net you, or maybe they just didn't bother.
Yeah,
they're holding on to the Cup final.
I can't remember, and I didn't want to look into it too much because it's so hard to like go back to like 2008 and be like, could they have traded this guy, Sean Horkoff, for I don't
Yeah, they could have.
don't know or care, but the point is they did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that actually, so, and then they, but the thing is Edmonton's building up to the vibe stage, which I kind of define as like when it starts to be fun again, but before you're in the season where you clinch a playoff spot. They're building up to the vibe stage. Didn't start until they drafted McDavid.
Right.
But because so they just had years of like no positive juju or vibes. It was just years of that. And it made me the Oilers were a really interesting test case to me because they were the only team that kind of went that like started, didn't quite finish, and then had to restart. And one time it worked, and another time it didn't. And a big reason for that is Hall was a very good player, whereas McDavid was a generational one. But I think there was another factor too at play. And I think something and it made me look at this for all the other teams too, is I think when you when your most important player of your eventual contending team like joins the team, you need to have good support in place already around him. And I don't mean like you got to have good vets who will show him the ropes. I mean, no, like you've got to have like some other really good young players already in place before your most important player comes involved. Exactly. Like San Jose is a great example of that with like, Will Smith. And, is he the only one?
No, they have a lot of guys.
Before Celebrini, basically.
Yeah.
But the teams that eventually make the playoffs and can kind of signify that the rebuild has come to an end, all had like good young players in place already to complement like the player that would inevitably become their best player. So there was nobody there before Hall. It was Everly and Gagne and nobody else. And like Sam Gagne, I think is like a career half point per game player. And then, but when you contrast that with McDavid, he already had Draisaitl in place. They already had Nurse. They had a pretty good goalie in Talbot already in place. So I think that's a big reason of why, again, McDavid is a generational player. Hall was just a very good player. That's a huge part of it, of why it worked the second time and not the first time. But I think another huge part of it was the Oilers at least had some cut pieces in place before McDavid came onto the scene, whereas before Hall did, they had next to nothing.
There's also the free agency factor where when you get a generational player, it excites free agents and they'll want to come.
Like getting Hyman.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like they were already actually kind of up and running.
Who's that center they got for $1.5 million this year?
Frederick?
No. He signed just at the start of the season.
Oh, Roslovic.
Yeah, Roslovic.
Yeah.
For $1.5 million, he's like 20-some goals last year.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
But having the good players in place, that's what allowed, or before your most important player comes aboard, that's what allowed Toronto to be so successful. Because their most important player, Matthews, because what the stage of the rebuild that Toronto kind of aced was basically the building up to the vibes. Because I might be getting my timelines a little bit mixed up here, but anyways, the point being like when they drafted Matthews and he joined the team next year as a 18-year-old rookie, they already had like Kadri, Riley, Marner, and Nylander all in place. Okay. And then they got their most important player as a rookie, and then they made the playoffs right away.
So was there teardown like the year after they lost in the first round of Boston, like that heartbreaking?
It was 2 years, I think. The next year, if I remember correctly, they looked like a decent team, crumbled in March.
Okay.
didn't trade anybody. And then the next year after that was when they again sucked all year, traded Kessel in the offseason, and then traded Phaneuf at the trade deadline the following year.
So their rebuild was also basically 3 years, because the year after they got Matthews, I think they made the playoffs, right?
As an 18-year-old rookie, they made it. He was drafted in 16, and they made the playoffs in 17. And so like 14, 15, 16 were their like rebuilding years, and then they made the playoffs. And I honestly think they were in such great shape then. It was pretty much everything they did after that that kind of limited the ceiling of that team. I just think the Tavares thing was a huge mistake.
Yeah.
But that's the type of problem that contending teams have. We're just looking at the rebuilds.
Sure.
Yeah. But that was kind of what made Toronto so unique.
Right.
I think it's worth mentioning that with Ottawa, the tough part about Ottawa was they kind of did the first stages like completely right until they got to the end, because they tore down pretty well. They got some good pieces in return for the teardown, or to help build up the teardown. Like as part of tearing down, they got Sanderson, the pick they would use on Sanderson, and Josh Norris, who they used to get Dylan Cousins. So they did, and then they drafted well. Like they got those guys as well as Tkachuk, and Batherson, and they had Shabbat in place already. Like Ottawa did all the early stuff in a rebuild, right? But what completely crippled them in trying to get out of rebuild was, I think it came down to two things. I think they hung on to their coach for too long, because the first coach they hired to replace DJ Smith was the one that made the necessary tweaks to get them into the playoffs. And they also had awful goaltending. I think the number one factor for that final step of getting out of a rebuild is having a good goalie to support the empty. He doesn't have to be great, but I looked, all the other teams had a pretty good goalie. Like Vancouver had Markstrom, and Montreal last year had Montembeault in a career year. Edmonton, the year they got out of it, had Talbot in a career year. The Leafs had Freddie Anderson. The getting out of it is the key part of getting out of it is having a good goalie in place. And Ottawa had cycled through goalies. It was Matt Murray and who knows. And it wasn't until they got Allmark that they were able to get out of it, and a new coach. So
and they got out of it right away too.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Ottawa kind of had this fifth stage that none of the other teams had, and it was like when you want to be done with the rebuild, but you just aren't yet. So that kind of assumes that the Flames are going to go through that themselves. That the Flames could do everything right as well, and then for whatever reason at the end, it still might not be enough, and we still are going to have to be patient on top of that. Ottawa did all the other steps in quick order. It was just that last step that took them forever. It's like, so the issue with the Flames taking forever to tear it down is if another stage of the rebuild takes an inordinate amount of time to happen, well, then we're just looking at not being in the playoffs for like a decade.
Right.
If another stage doesn't takes longer than we expect.
Yeah, it's probably not a goalie in our case, obviously, but it could be a center.
Yeah,
so
or it could be in that factor I haven't thought of too.
Yeah.
Like I don't have all the answers. It's just what I just looked at 5 teams.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the thing that stuck out to me the most about Ottawa. And it should be scary because nothing's a guarantee.
It's true.
Um,
Get stuck in the cycle of Edmonton where you're just completely bottomed out every year and no one wants to play for you.
yeah. and you're relying on a generational player, like not just a first overall pick, but a generational first overall pick.
Well, and that's where I think depth comes in and drafting well in your later rounds too, right?
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So, like, I think the flank, because you want 3 or 4 like young support pieces for when your most important player arrives. And let's just hypothetically say that the Flames' most important player of this next year, they're going to draft this year. Whether that's 1, whether that's 4, wherever, let's just hypothetically say that. I think, well, it's hard to say. I think you could, if you're optimistic, you could make the argument that the Flames maybe have like 4 really good young players in place to surround whoever that 18-year-old they're going to draft in the summer of 2026 is. And those would be Wolf, Zane, and then of all the forwards they've drafted, so that's like Reshny and Gridden and Basha and Battaglia and Wittenbach and all of them, 2 guys emerge. I don't know which 2, but 2 emerge.
And I think to Ristevich too.
Yeah.
And Henry Muse. All look like really good potential. So
that's the thing too. Is like I kind of assumed Zane. Maybe Zane doesn't fully pan out. But at least if he doesn't fully pan out, you've got a lottery ticket in Ristevich, who maybe he'll exceed expectations, or maybe Muse, if he gets healthy again, will exceed expectations, or something like that. So maybe I should rephrase. So I think if the Flames draft their most important player of this rebuild this summer, then the young support pieces already in place, I would say, are Wolf, one of the defensemen they've drafted already, whoever that may be, and 2 of the forwards they've drafted already, whoever that may be.
Yeah. I feel like it's probably, I don't want to say enough, but like there's obviously going to be a supporting cast for this year if we trade a couple of players. Like we straight up have to trade a couple of these forwards in our team. There's just too many of them.
You have to make room.
Yeah. So if we add some more picks this year, don't add any roster players externally, just internally, I think that they're in a really good spot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think so. I think they could be. I don't want to guarantee anything. I think there's the potential is there, and it's not a pipe dream. Yeah. These players just have to pan out now, and that's kind of the fun, but maybe a little bit frustrating part of this right now is like I do think that the Flames, because like when some people say, "Oh, we have 0 stars in the system," I think that's not true. I think we have 1 or 2 stars already in the system. We just don't know for sure who they are yet. Yeah. I don't think we have like our best player for when we're contending again, but I think like I always look at your like 4 most utilized forwards and your 2 most utilized defensemen, and I think realistically we have 1 to 2 of those forwards and 1 of those defensemen in the system already. We just don't know for sure who they are. Likely Zane is one of those defensemen, but who knows?
Yeah.
So
they're really playing it very well right now.
Oh God. I'm worried about that, man.
Yeah.
Like you gotta play them. They're only gonna get better playing.
Yeah.
Like it's not a hard concept.
They're not gonna get better if they're not playing.
Yeah. I just also think like his struggles have been wildly overblown. Like,
oh, for sure.
Has he lit the world on fire? No. Has he been awful where it's a disaster every night? Like some people are painting it to be? Also no. Like,
and even if you say he has been, like the rest of the team has been. So
yeah, exactly.
Not just him.
Yeah. So this whole Zane discourse to me, it feels like we're giving a voice to the dumbest people who cover this team and actually listening to them.
Yeah.
And because hockey analytics are kind of a bit of a black hole and not everyone fully understands them, they can't be called out on it. but if you actually like apply yourself and try and learn about the finer ways of covering this team, it should be pretty obvious to you. It should be pretty obvious to you that Zane has been fine. He's not been great. He's not been awful. He's been fine, and he's going to get better if he continues playing.
He's only 19. Defensemen take longer than forwards on the average.
Mm-hmm.
It could be 2 or 3 years. Like I don't know what Quinn Hughes. He was 3 or 4 years before he became an all-star. Like,
but his Quinn Hughes' D+1 year was really good.
oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It was the year the season shut off because of COVID.
Oh, okay. I made the playoffs that year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's reason for optimism. There's reason for pessimism. It just be nice to kind of get going on this, because it feels like we've been in this. It feels like we've kind of been stuck in this very specific form of purgatory with this specific group of players for 2 years now. Like, I'm ready to see like the next generation of players, not the last generation of players.
That's very fair.
So
I am too.
Yeah. Do you have anything else?
Well, you see Vancouver. I don't know.
I mean, I don't have anything that interesting. I think the most interesting thing to say about Vancouver is that they completed their rebuild and then it immediately went awful. So their contention window was just so short. But
why is that? Like, is it the chemistry thing with JT Miller? Like,
I think
they have the supporting cast for Pettersson, maybe.
I would say Hughes is their most important player.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I'm just thinking like their forwards. They don't have that many.
Here's my thing with Vancouver, and it has less to do with their rebuild, but like we all look at that season a couple years ago and the disappointment of last year and be like, oh man, they were so unfortunate. They were so unfortunate last year. Everything went wrong. But it's like, if you just put a placeholder, you just cover up that 1 year they made the playoffs and look at the results of last year and compare it to like the 3 years before, it fits right in.
Yeah.
So was last year such a disappointment, or was 2 years ago when they were on a PDO heater just a huge aberration and not at all sustainable?
Yeah, it could be that for sure.
So they made the playoffs Quinn's rookie year, and then immediately kind of went back to stumbling and fumbling around.
Is he a UFA soon?
He is, yeah. So have fun with that.
Yeah, that's not looking good.
To be honest, I would need to deep dive. I think Vancouver's issues would probably be like they missed on a lot of firsts outside of Pettersson and Hughes. That would probably be they kind of just have done everything wrong. I would need to do a deeper dive on some of the trades that like the OEL trade. Like, if you replace OEL's cap hit with Dylan Guenther, that franchise is in a much
Is that who they drafted?
That's who Arizona drafted.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah. Sorry, you got to get rid of Connor Garland too. If you replace Dylan Guenther with Connor Garland, you feel way different about the future of that franchise. Yeah, it's very boring analysis, but I think what went wrong in Vancouver is just poor drafting, like missing on first, not drafting super well outside the first round, and a whole bunch of bad trades. I would have to do a deeper dive on the Canucks to fully talk about them more. Maybe that's a good idea for a show. At least we're not the Canucks.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a discussion for another day. But they did follow some of the other patterns of the other teams, but there was nothing really like super special or unique about what they did. It was just they traded away Kessler Vieksa. They drafted, Besser and Pettersson and Hughes and Demko. But yeah, everything else around it, I think, everything that else they did other than that was pretty much bad, which is why they kind of are where they are right now.
Right.
So, yeah. Anything else?
No, I think it's good. I'm honestly pretty optimistic about the Flames team in the future. Like probably not as good as Montreal, but maybe better than Ottawa.
I will feel optimistic if they make the trade. If they trade Kadri, I assume I just assume the Anderson trade is a guarantee at this point. Like if they don't trade Anderson, then
What's going on?
Yeah, but I would say it's not pessimism. I would just say my optimism is on hold for the moment, and it can be restored with a Nazem Kadri trade this year.
Why just this year?
Because I don't know if you'll have an opportunity to trade him again. Like he's old.
Yeah, but I mean it's like less contract.
But he'd be less good.
Maybe. That's true. Fair enough. Yeah, we definitely the sooner.
I'm worried. I'm not worried he'll get worse. I'm worried because of his age, he'll fall off a cliff.
Yeah, that could happen too.
Because he's not he's like mid-30s. It's not like he's way older than Lindholm was when Lindholm was traded. If you replace the two players if Kadri was 28 right now, I'd be like, okay, maybe this year get the right deal, but you don't have to. But he's so old for an NHL center. You might not ever get this opportunity again if you wait.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Fair enough. Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree.
Yeah. So, like I said, I wouldn't say I'm full on pessimistic right now. They've got 4 months to trade him. I'm putting it on hold. I don't have a whole lot to be optimistic. It's not like Zane Parekh is playing every night. And
last in the league though.
For now.
That's where I have optimism. Yeah, if they actually get a top 5 pick this year, get a McKenna, get a Stenberg.
See, I'm also not fully convinced they'll finish bottom 5. Yeah. There's still a lot of season left.
That's true. Yeah.
For them to finish bottom 5, you kind of have to be convinced that this team is materially worse than they have been the last 3 years, which I'm not, as they're currently constructed. I think it's a pretty similar team as we've seen the last 3 years, who's just gotten off to a really bad start.
Yeah.
Due to them not being good, but also some bad bounces too.
Yeah, I think they've actually played not obviously they played way worse than they are.
Yeah.
So.
Which is concerning because means they could turn it around.
And they also had a hard schedule to start.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I'm not fully convinced that a top 5 pick is all but ours.
And they could trade some of these forwards and get better with their young replacements too.
See, if that happened, I actually would be kind of optimistic, even though it screws up the draft pick. But if that happens, it must mean you've drafted some really good
That's
players.
True.
Well,
I'd say Anderson's looked pretty bad this year.
Yeah.
So, and that hurts his stock as well. But,
yeah.
I could see Buchnevich coming in and being better than Anderson.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
So, who knows? There's 68 games left. That's a lot of runway. And I don't mean that they still might make the playoffs. No, the playoffs are fucking done. They would have to be materially better than they have been the last 3 years, and I definitely don't see that either. But there's a lot of time left for them to screw up this tank.
Yeah, you had a post a couple of days ago about what the Flames' pace would have to be to hit 96. Do you remember what it was?
I can pull it up quick.
111 or something.
Yeah, what I did was I did a whole bunch of math. To get this many points, they'd have to play at this pace. To get 96, I think they have to play at over 100 point pace.
Well,
yeah, it's loading here. Let's see. What do we got? I'm just going past the big short joke. Okay, here it is. To get to To finish with 97, they would have to play at a 107-point pace.
Okay.
I'd remind you that the year where they had the best line in hockey, a Vezina caliber goalie, and one of the deepest D-cores in the league, and the second line, Andrew Mangiapane, who scored 35, they got 110 points that year.
Wow.
They basically have to pay at that pace, but they still have a Vezina caliber goalie. So they'd have to have the Vezina winner.
Yeah.
But to like finish with 85 points this year, they'd only have to play at a 93-point pace. Like if I told you at the beginning of this year this team finished with 93 points, would you have scoffed at that?
No.
So if they just do that the rest of the year, they get 85. That's very mushy middle. Like if they
finished 85 last year, what would they have?
They would have had 10.
Okay, that's not great.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be a good draft this year too.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But I'd much rather be drafting 4 in the good draft than 10 in the good draft.
Yeah.
It's kind of what got me last year too. Like, oh, it's a bad draft, so I'd still rather would be drafting high in the bad draft than low in the bad draft.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's a bad draft for everybody.
Yeah.
So you still want to be higher even if it is a bad draft.
Yeah.
Oh,
we didn't have a pick anyways.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm afraid there's a lot of runway left for them to be mid still.
There is, yeah.
Which I'm very worried about. So that doesn't even instill a whole ton of optimism in me. Is like we still need to lose some more games.